Hi, everyone. Hopefully that was not as abrupt of a transition as we've had previously. Tried to make it a little bit smoother. Welcome. So you may notice that none of us are Arlemy or Joyce. We are, are here in their stead to hopefully show you something cool about Async API. So we have Kin Lane, Chief Evangelist here at Postman. Knows a lot about OpenAPI and specifications in general, will help guide us along. And of course, we have the expert here, Fran from Async API.
Oh, is it me? Okay. Welcome, man.
I should have practiced my French accent so I could have pretended to be Arlemy, but I'll do that for next time.
Oh, it's really difficult. I've tried that. It's really difficult. It's difficult to be Arlemy.
Challenge accepted.
So great. Like, I want to spend a minute talking about Async API because I think it's probably new to a lot of folks, and it's fairly new to me in a lot of ways. So, Fran, maybe you can give us like a good intro over what Async API is, why we should care.
Well, you got me here. Let me think about it a little bit. Yeah, the usual thing that I keep saying about Async API, like what it is, it's a specification and an ecosystem of tools to define and work with event-driven architectures or asynchronous APIs. Therefore, the name of Async API, right? It all started as a kind of a fork of OpenAPI because I wanted to have this kind of specification like OpenAPI specification, but for AMQP, MQTT, Kafka, and other messaging protocols. And that's I will say that this is like the big picture of it, right? It's a spec. There are tools to generate documentation, code, and other stuff, right? And soon other stuff, I would say.
And I would add, I would layer on there that having been part of the OpenAPI evolution from early days, Swagger, all the way to where we're at with OpenAPI now, when I first started watching what Fran was doing with Async, it feels very 2012, 2013 Swagger-ish to me. As far not just in the technical, but in the upswing as far as people being aware of it, and there's a lot of just common patterns in the growth, community, and evolution of it.
Good to know.
Okay, so Kin, I see that you have Async API on your board behind you. It feels like product placement a little bit. You've also got OpenAPI, JSON Schema. How are these things related?
Yeah, and I would, that's definitely going to stay up there because that's like my primary focus now is those 4 specs, amongst others. There's other specs. But for me, this represents the true API lifecycle, kind of our API toolbox, if you'd say. Like, this is how we are doing what we do in the API world today. And this is a world, that is not just REST APIs or hypermedia APIs or GraphQL APIs or SOAP APIs. As Fran said, it's Kafka, it's NATS, it's MQTT, it's AMQP. This is a whole toolbox of operations that we need to tackle when we're doing things across like the most the enterprise organization and how we're trying to do things. So these are the specs that I'm tuned into, because this is how you map out the world. This is how I understand what people are doing with APIs. This is how, if I'm building an API and I want to communicate it with an audience, I use OpenAPI for my HTTP 1.1 APIs. I use Async API for everything else. I use JSON Schema to model, even though it's not built for modeling, asterisks. I use it to model and validate the messages and the request and response bodies that I'm passing back and forth. And then Postman collections is very much how I kind of do the dance, do the orchestration across the API lifecycle. It's how I'm generating my docs. It's how I'm generating tests, mocks, and different things like that. And there's an overlap with the async world there when it comes to Postman collections, but we've got a lot of work to do in the coming months. So that's my world.
Cool. Well, I honestly have a little trouble grasping what a workflow looks like with Async API. So, I think Fran's going to walk us through that experience and, building up the document and kind of figuring out what that experience is like. I know kind of in my past, I've done event-driven architecture a lot. I've done service-oriented architecture. Because we work at Postman, we see obviously a lot of service-oriented stuff, microservices happening day in, day out. Do we think that the event-driven world, it's kind of had this big kind of explosion recently and coming back to the forefront? Do we see that like kind of eclipsing APIs that we think of today in terms of HTTP at some point, or perhaps it's already there today and it's just sort of under the covers and we don't know?
So I hope it doesn't. Let me elaborate on that. It's been the same discussion like for years and probably forever. That people are always like REST or GraphQL, or there's a new technology. Is it REST or is it SOAP? Is it REST or is it GraphQL? What's better? Is it one is gonna eclipse the other? I hope it doesn't, right? They solve very different problems. They all have different use cases, and I think and I hope the future is a future where we have REST APIs, GraphQL APIs, we have event-driven architectures, we have SOAP, we have SOAP. I hope it's not in the future, but I'm kidding. But that the future must be diverse, right? And so when people ask me if event-driven architectures are gonna eat the world and replace REST APIs and all this stuff, it's like no, and I hope it doesn't happen, because they're not meant to cover the cases REST APIs are supposed to cover, right? So yeah, I hope that.
Gotcha. We got a lot of questions here. ELL5, I just had to Google that because I had no idea what that meant, but it's explain it like I'm 5, right? So thank you, John's work alias.
Okay.
Explain like I'm 5. Wants, kind of a more intro to what is Async API. Would it help to actually get started and start looking at what Async API looks like?
If I had to explain it like you're 5, right? I'll probably tell you this should be worrying about these things. You're 5 years old, so don't worry about APIs. But now, seriously speaking, I will say that the way I'll describe this is it's a specification, or it's a language to describe bi-directional communication between two machines, let's say 2 or more machines, right? That's what Async API is for, right? Then what does machine mean here? It can mean many things. It can be your phone, it can be a sensor, it can be a server, it can be a microservice, it can be many things, right? It's just a computer, a program running in a computer. That's what I mean by machine, right? Like, so programs running in computers communicating between them in a bi-directional way. That's and and in a asynchronous fashion. So it's like the difference with REST APIs in this case will be, or not REST APIs, with the request response pattern is that machines send messages between them, but don't expect a response. They don't keep waiting for a response or anything, right? They just send some message and that's it. At some point, they will receive some other messages or not, if maybe they're not interested in subscribing to messages from other machines, right? That's what I usually, that's the metaphor, or yeah, that's the kind of explanation that I use for non-technical people. Also, I tend I've seen that it tends to work when I use the metaphor of the kiosk where you buy the newspaper. So, say for instance, I don't know what's a famous. Oh, okay, of course, New York Times, for instance. Okay, so I usually use the Spanish newspapers, but people are not gonna know them. So yeah, newspaper. So say for instance that New York Times sends the newspaper itself to the kiosk. Let's simplify things, of course. And then you go to the kiosk and buy the newspaper to read the content, right? To read the content of their message. That's the message they have to send you, right? The cool thing here is that the consumer, the reader here, the reader doesn't, sorry, actually the opposite, like the producer, which is New York Times, doesn't need to know who's the reader, who's going to receive the newspaper, right? They just put it into the kiosk, and whoever is interested in the New York Times go there and buy it and read it, right? So that explanation, or that that explanation could be a simple description of what happens in broker-based architectures, which is most probably the main type of architecture for event-driven APIs or asynchronous APIs. Right?
Yeah. So Fran, they're like, what is Async API? Right? It's not a broker. It's not a protocol like MQTT or AMQP. What is Async API?
So Async API is a language. First of all, is a language that defines what an application accepts as messages. So what messages can you send to a specific application, and what messages is this application sending to their consumers? Barely, it would be like this, right? And then and also you can specify where the broker is located, what's the name of the channels that you can use to fragment or to deliver this information in different channels, right? Like you don't have a single channel where you send all the information. You usually have multiple channels, and you can also see what's the definition of your message, right? Like what's expected for you to receive as a message if you subscribe to one of these channels, or what I'm expecting as a message if you send me the message to myself, right? To the application, right? So effectively, again, in simple words, is it's a language to define how to communicate with a specific application using event-driven protocols, let's say, or event protocols.
So is it like OpenAPI in the sense that we could use this as a design time document to say, like, how do we want to model our events that we want to subscribe to or publish, and then come to some kind of agreement on that? And then what? Are there generators like in the OpenAPI space as well? Can I generate a publisher or a subscriber?
Correct. So this is actually the main use case that people have been using it for. You agree on design time. You agree on what are going to be the channels for use for communication for a specific app, how the messages are going to look like, and then from there you can use documentation generators, code generators to bootstrap your code, and yeah, it's usually a useful tool for design time, right? So far, we plan to jump into the runtime side as well, but with tooling maintained by the the initiative, but yeah, so far it's this.
So far, I like that. It's like some suspense. Like so far,
Yeah.
there's more coming. Well, should we jump into it and start like getting a feel for it? I think for me, even just seeing what this looks like would be really helpful.
Yeah, that's it. Let me just.
I think the different parts of Async API specification help kind of introduce and walk you through it. So it's I think this is a good exercise.
Yep. So let me just type the basic thing that you have to start with, right? Just saying.
Can you zoom in a little bit more?
You want me to zoom it more?
Like this? I have vision problems, buddy. Like, yeah, there, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so I don't know if someone is selecting. Is any of you selecting the first line?
Oh, I might be. Okay, I'm clicking into the other screen. Sorry.
No, I'm saying because it's a red with a red background or orange background, and some people might not see it. So, not sure if
I clicked into the screen, so I'm no longer clicking in there. It ain't me.
Okay. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, so this is the first thing that you should be adding, telling the document of telling the tooling that this is Async API 2.0, right? So as King was saying, I think what helps a lot here is starting with the basics, right? So first thing we want to usually do here is what's the title, what's the name of our API or of our Asynchronous API, and what's the version, right? So let's just get the version, the title. So we have an example on our website which is called streetlights. I'm trying to get rid of this background, this orange background, but I don't think it's possible.
Yeah, it's weird. Sorry. I don't see it in the shared IDE, but I see it on the screen. You're right.
Yeah. I don't know. Sorry, I'm gonna kick you out from the live code, Kin.
Okay.
Let's see if because
I understand.
You're orange, and that's making me think that it can be you. Yes. So. Okay.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask the hard questions then, since I don't get a type over you. Much better. So okay. This is why this process is good. This is one of the things people don't think about when they're doing OpenAPI or Async is it helps you just describe. I mean, you can have what is the information. So you can literally start with what is the name of my API and what is the description and what is the version, and you can build from there.
Exactly. So I will say that these are the basics, right? Like we need to agree on what the hell are we building and what's the version, right? So servers. So servers here are very similar to OpenAPI servers. The only or one of the differences here is that we don't always use HTTP, right? So we have to specify. Let's just use this maybe development. So this is the name of the server. We have to specify the URL, but we also have to specify the protocol, right? So the protocol here could be MQTT, for instance, right? And therefore, we can have something like test mosquito. I think it's org. So this is use a mosquito broker, right?
Right. And so this URL is going to a broker that is actually, is this a live broker? Is this hosted somewhere?
Yes, this is a live broker, and I hope it's not down. It's a test broker that Mosquito offers for free for anyone who wants to test. And yeah, so that's this one. Then you can describe multiple ones, right? So you can have here something like I don't know, production mic or I don't know, broker my company. .com, right? Can be internal URL only. And protocol is going to be MQTT.
And just for the benefit of folks who don't have an event-driven architecture background here, I'm going to do my best to try to explain what a message broker is. But if I get something wrong, please correct me. So the message broker in this case is going to handle messages. So we're going to publish messages. Folks are going to subscribe to those messages, and they'll get them, right? And I think what we're going to end up doing here is modeling out what those messages look like. The broker is responsible for delivering those messages when we publish them to those who are listening for them, who are subscribed to it. Is that a fairly accurate statement?
It is. I will say yes. Yeah.
So what are we doing here? What is a channel?
Well, so channels. How can I frame this? So think about Slack, for instance, right? Communication in Slack doesn't happen all in a single chat window, right? Because that will be a mess. Can you imagine a big company, Slack, if we only had one single channel, one single place, one single chat window for everyone to maintain a conversation? That will be impossible to handle, right? So therefore, communication needs to be divided in channels, like you want to, or in groups, or in rooms, like chat rooms as well, right? So you might want to classify your messages. Like I'm only interested in messages coming from Kevin, or I'm only interested in messages coming from Kin. I'm not interested in, for instance, in messages coming from someone else, right? So I don't want to receive the whole load of messages, just the messages from you two, and probably keep them separated because I want to handle them separately, right? Same thing happens with the brokers. Like I'm probably interested in a kind of message, like for instance, a user signs up. I want to know that the user just signed up, right? There is a conversion on my product. I want to only receive whenever I get a conversion on my product, or things like this. You want to classify information, so I don't have to subscribe to all the things happening on my company, right, at the same time. That will be stupid from a technical point of view, right? Because you will receive a whole lot of messages that you're not interested in. So in our
Naveen,
case here,
like different channels for different teams, like QA, dev, front end, managers.
can be. I mean, actually, the division is up to you. It's up to everyone to decide. Usually, channels are for how's it called? I forget the name of this. Like different aspects of your application, of your business. How's it called? I forget that word. Anyway,
I mean,
so
it's interchangeable with topics. There's a lot of different ways people use to describe them. It's not just channels.
Yeah, so channels will be the same thing as topics in MQTT, or Kafka will be the same as rooms in socket.io. There are ways to classify. These are ways to classify the information, but usually the people tend to divide them by scope, right? Parts of your business, and so you don't want to have. You probably don't want to have messages only for your team, or divided by team, because teams can change over time, right? You have a reorg, and then then what? Who's going to take ownership of this channel, right? So like for instance, in this case here, we're gonna use an example, which is streetlights example, and this is like summarizing. Suppose that we have a smart city company, and we're going to deploy lots of smart street lights in the streets, and we want to control them from a control panel, right? You probably want to have a channel for turn them on, turn them off, dim the light, different actions maybe, right? Or maybe you can just have a channel for the street lights itself, because you have the thing here is that people can decide how to split or how to divide the information they have in their business in different channels. Does it make sense?
It really depends on the types of resources that you're making available,
Yeah.
because it could be, any sort of categorization to the chat stream. Like, it could be for different like Q&A dev, managers. Depends on the work stream, whatever you're streaming over the channels. It just really depends.
So yeah. So so now that we have channel, let's, as I was saying, as an example, this could be, we have channels turned on. We create a channel here and say we're gonna have a channel that is called turn on, and as you can imagine, this is to turn on a light, right? And therefore, the first thing that we will have to mention here is that let me just make it clear. So this is a single street light, right? So this is representing one of the deployed street light in the street, right? And we want to turn it on, right? And because we want to turn it on, we have to publish a message to this street light, right? We have to send a message to this street light somehow, right? That's what it means. And then we get to define what's the message, right? And in the message, we say, this is pure JSON schema now. Okay, so whatever's inside payload is pure JSON schema, nothing new here. So we may want to turn it on, and one of the things that we want to understand is, first of all, is the ID of the street light, right? Because there's a common channel for all the street lights, right? All the street lights are going to be subscribed to this turn on channel, and they all are going to receive this message, right? So it's not directed to a specific one. So what's going to happen is that we need to specify which street light we want to turn on. Okay, this will be something probably more than enough. Right? Let me just add also some description here and say this is the message you have to use to turn a street light on. Yes.
Oh boy,
I think
YAML strings. So
yes.
So turn on is the channel that we define, right? Like, so we're going to set up this channel, perhaps if it requires any setup beforehand. Publish, is that something that the spec defines? Like, is this essentially like a write model that we define underneath publish?
Yeah. So this can actually be either public
or subscribe.
It can be only two. Okay. So this is a free form field. You can call it whatever you want. This is not a free form field, and yeah, the rest is not free form except, of course, the payload, depending on the message. But this can be either publish or subscribe. What does it mean if we put subscribe here? It will mean that the street light will be sending to you a message to turn the street light on, which doesn't make sense. It's we want the opposite, right? We want to send a message to the street light to turn it on, right? So yeah, that makes it a little bit more a little bit clearer. I think before I continue, I think it may be helpful. Let me see if I can share my other window.
Yeah, because I think I'm still kind of struggling. Like, what do we do with this, right? I could see that it has some benefits here for event modeling. You know, Kin and I, or the three of us, are getting in there and trying to figure out how we model these different events. But then what? You know?
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna show now. So what do we do with this? Is all of this for what exactly, right? Connection is a little bit slow. I hope it loads quickly. maybe you want to share some funny story.
I bet
in-
Kin has a good story for us.
I've got plenty of stories. Well, the streetlight one, one of my favorite patents out there from Amazon. Amazon has the patent for landing drones on streetlights and charging them. So if you're ever planning on building a delivery system with drones and you want to charge them, you're gonna have to pay Amazon some money to be able to land them on streetlights and plug them in.
Oh, damn. That's really bad.
It's true.
So first outcome of this document that we just created is, as usually with as with OpenAPI and other specs, is a documentation that you can get, right? You can get human readable documentation very easily, and what you see on the right side is generated documentation from our document that we just created on the left side, which is the one we created on the other on the editor, right? And you instantly can see that we have different servers to connect to. We probably should be putting some description here and say this is the development server, right? Broker maybe. And this is the production broker, right? So you'll see here what it is, right? And then you instantly see, for instance, it says that to communicate with streetlight version 1.0.0, you have to publish in one of these brokers here, depending on what you're doing, right? If you're in development or in production. And to turn the streetlight on, you have to publish a message. And this is what the message looks like, right? It's a JSON object with an ID, and the ID must be a string. As in OpenAPI, and I think this is JSON schema stuff. This can have a description, so this can be the ID of the street light, right? And yeah, you can get some auto-generated examples. Again, regarding examples, for instance, cool thing here is we can just have this, for instance, I don't know, street light 001, whatever. Just inventing this. Yeah. Then hope we can deploy our new playground soon, which has the VS Code embedded on the web.
Oh, nice.
It's much better because this one is it's not good, right? So you see, it automatically takes the example that you put here. The first one, actually, you can have multiple, right? This is your beloved YAML examples, Kevin. So I know that you love them. So
Love them.
you love YAML. And yeah, so first outcome of writing this document is documentation. You get documentation auto-generated, right? Then second one will be don't let me just check. Okay, no, this is to download. We don't have this yet. So let me just get this back to the editor, and I hope. Okay, where is it? There you go. Cool. So I'm gonna replace it because I did some additions there, right? So one of the first things that I would love to do is generate code, right? Damn, I'm gonna make you feel a little bit lost with this changes on the shared screen, but yeah, I cannot share my whole screen because it's like extra wide. You will
It's
not
like
see
a weird
anything.
flex. You're like, oh, sorry, I can't share my whole screen. It's like 3 football fields long.
Yes, it's a really long one. So yeah, I think can you select my screen, Kevin? I think you have to do it maybe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. So if you come to the website, you'll see that one of the then I have things here that I want to remove. So one of the first things that you can see is that you can go to the playground, but here on the top you have the navigation, and you get a bunch of tools, right? So well, a few of them. Generator is one of them. Generator is the tool that we're using here. This on the right side, this human readable documentation is generated using generator, right? We've been super creative with the name, and that it supports HTML, but you can also generate markdown documentation out of the Async API file. So yeah, so you can imagine there are many generators, right?
And so are folks putting this like the markdown in their GitHub repo? Are they hosting this kind of like HTML output statically, like on their own documentation servers or dev portals?
That's one way. For instance, markdown could be along with your code, the code of your streetlight code on GitHub maybe, and then the HTML code, the HTML website for the documentation. It's something that you can offer to your partners or your consumers for reference on how to turn on or off streetlights. Probably not to any consumer, probably just for other teams, right? So they know how to do it. But yeah, and then for instance here on the generator, you have like a bunch of generators templates. That's what we call them templates, because the generator is literally based on template. It's a templating system, so you can build whatever you want. And if you cannot find your language, your programming language, or something that you want here, you can create your own one very easily, and just head to the documentation. It's all explained there. And so, for instance, let's say we're gonna generate Node.js code, right? First of all, let me install it, because this is a new laptop, so I don't think it's I have the latest version.
I don't think you're sharing that part of your screen anymore.
No, exactly. Okay, so let me again. It would be great if you could share like 2 windows, and then you can easily switch between them. Restream, I'm looking at you.
Or if you just had a normal average human-sized monitor.
That's not an option. Not anymore.
No.
Not anymore, man. So yeah, so here in the wait, let me just save it. I'm just copy pasting this from the documentation. Okay, so whoever wants to follow what I did, it's exactly what's what was on the website. And what was there was an example that we have online in case you just want to try it out quickly. But we want to generate this file, this Async API file, right? So we're going to specify that it's this Async API YAML file. Next, we specify that we want to use the Node.js template that we provide at Async API. And then we want to specify which server we want to generate the code for, right? So it's like, we want it for development, we want it for production. This one says production, but since production broker doesn't exist, at least as far as I know, let's just development and folder where you want to place the output, right? Let's just put Node.js. Okay. Don't fail. Okay, so it's installing everything. Okay, done. So let me just check here. If you, I think you can see, right? Yes, it's big enough. So we have a Node.js folder now. I can also do it here in case you don't see it well. And inside we got a lot of code. Where's my?
And will this work since that Mosquito test broker is supposed to be like, live?
Let me try. Let's see. Okay. So let's run npm start now. Okay, first failure. Oh, okay, yeah, of course. You see, we need help. We need help on the open source initiative. Okay, so what's complaining here is...
Did you put like a little bug in the code just so you can do this call out for help? Yeah. As you can
actually
need some
you
help.
You might find it funny or not, but this has been like here for a year probably, but nobody takes the time to fix it because, and we have it as a good first issue because it's really easy to fix. But yeah, open source sometimes takes time for people to jump in. So let's just call it something. I don't know. Turn the lights on, something like this, and let's regenerate it. Wait, let me just do it here. Here. Okay. And the output is gonna be here. Okay. Yeah. So that's also, look, we have like a very good defense here for people using the code generator, is that if it checks that your directory is not empty, it will not generate, right? It's just for you to not remove your code, basically, to not overwrite your code by mistake, right? So what we're gonna do here is what was, I have to check this because I can't remember.
Right. Like force-right?
No, it's because we have different force params. We have different ones for different things. Let me check on the docs. Force right, yes. Is this the one that you were saying, Kevin?
Yeah, it's the one that the error message told you to use. Very helpful.
We have a helpful message, but I was not reading it at all.
I suffer from that same illness.
Yeah, it's always the same. Yeah, also seeing the trace here, it doesn't help. So yeah. Okay, let me just regenerate it. Cool. I don't think I have to install anything. Everything is installed. Oh, damn. Okay, this is... Let's just see what's happening in the code. This is making fun of me today.
That's what live coding's all about, my friend.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So turn on handler. Yeah, it doesn't have a name here, right? So yeah, turn the lights on.
Oh, is this what you were trying to fix with the operation ID?
Sorry?
When you were writing the operation ID in the spec, is this what you were trying to fix?
Yes, I was trying to imply that the name of this operation is turn the lights on, right? But yeah, there must be some other bugs here. And yeah, anyway, let me just... Cool, as you can see, it's working. It says subscribe to turn on, and I'm going to explain further why it says subscribed and not published, even though we wrote published. And this is the name of the app, and then it says that the MQTT adapter is connected. Why adapter? Because we support multiple protocols, and this template can use MQTT and Kafka and many other protocols, right? So why, first of all, why does it say subscribe if we have publish here, right? Well, we have a very intense debate on Async API about the meaning of the verbs and the point of view on the verbs. And the way it is right now, I'm not gonna get deep into the conversation. I'm just gonna explain how it is right now. Is this, you have to look at this from the consumer point of view. Like in OpenAPI, for instance, when you see get or post, it doesn't mean that your API code is going to make a get request somewhere. It means that your consumers can make a get request to you, right? You, meaning you are the API, the owner, the code running, the server, right? So that's what it means here as well. So when you see publish, is that whoever wants to turn this streetlight on or off has to publish. And because we're generating the code for the server, not for the consumer, it has to subscribe. Otherwise, it will not receive the messages. Which is
one of the biggest reasons, A, we do APIs, and B, we describe them as we're designing, developing, or putting them out there using OpenAPI and Async, is because it forces you to think, get outside of your bubble with your blinders on as a provider, and it forces you to think, how am I going to communicate this to someone? How are they going to perceive it? And so I think that conversation is why there's confusion around it, is because people are still stuck in their mindset, and they're thinking of it from their perspective as a provider, and they're not considering the consumer perspective.
Yeah, and I understand that this can get very confusing. Actually, one of the first things that we want to do on next version of the spec is get rid of this confusion somehow. We still don't know how. We have like at least 2 ideas that could work. But yeah, still, I've seen Kevin's face like, not really get it. Like,
confusing because this isn't really a client server model, right? Like there's a broker in between. So when you generated this, did you set some setting that said this was going to be some kind of producer or consumer?
No. So this is always like, that's why I was making an emphasis in the beginning that this is the file representing the street light, not the control panel that is going to turn it on or off. This is the street light, the software that is going to be running on the board inside the street light, right, on the street. So it depends on the point of view. If you're the control panel, the consumer here, let's say, if you want, or you are the street light, could call it the server side, but this is not really a server side because this is the application, let's say. Depending on your point of view, who you are, then publish and subscribe change. You know what I mean? Change the meaning. Right. If we were to describe here the control panel instead of the street light application, everything will be the same, except here it will be subscribe. Right?
Okay.
Why?
Control panel is what would publish the turn on message, right?
Exactly. So it's because control panel will publish the message, then it means that you can subscribe to it. You know, you have to always look at it from the outside of whoever is the subject here. You know what I mean?
I see.
It's super confusing. I'm not gonna judge you if you don't get it at first. I'm still getting confused sometimes.
When I look at these things, I think it was Fred Brooks, right, who talks about essential complexity versus accidental complexity. I think this is exactly the essential complexity of this pattern of communication and trying to wrap modeling around it.
I think this is accidental complexity trying to map OpenAPI to event-driven architectures.
I will take your word for it.
Yeah, when I started Async API, all I did was, okay, let's just copy paste OpenAPI and start from top to bottom and see what I have to change to make it compatible with event-driven protocols, messaging protocols, right? But there was something inner to this kind of architecture that doesn't match well with OpenAPI, which is that it doesn't necessarily is client server. There's not necessarily a client and a server, because you can see it as there's node, let's say an architecture of multiple connected nodes, right? And every node can be a server and a client at the same time, right? They can be both. Like for instance, nothing is preventing me to have another channel here where instead of expecting a publish, I can expect a subscribe in the same application.
So is the pattern to have one async API document per actor? So like, you mentioned
Per
control
actor
panel versus streetlight.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is per application. Yeah, actually it's defined like this in the spec. Like this is the information of your application, not the information of your API or anything. It's the code running on your machine, right? So it's your app. Effectively, it's your app, right? So
it just occurred to me that Joyce has her connected light. Like if we were more prepared here, we could actually be wiring this up to her light and turning it on and off. Maybe next time.
Next time. Sounds like a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just cool.
Because I think hers was just a request response API for her lights. I think we need a real-time one.
So we have a question here from John's work alias. So the streetlight would publish a status after doing something, and the control panel would subscribe to those status messages?
Possibly, yes. This could be another channel. Like we could create another channel, which is, it's like kind of a request response model, but could be done. That we have a channel for telling the streetlight to turn on, and then we have another channel where the control panel will subscribe to get a message saying, okay, I already turned it on. Okay.
Right.
But
or
that's
the streetlight could automatically turn itself on when it recognizes that it's dark outside.
Okay.
As a photo
Yeah.
sensor.
This could be exactly. This could be like it has a light sensor, and then it detects it's too dark around. So I'm gonna turn myself on, and then I'll send a message to the control panel saying, "Hey, I'm on." Right. This could be another, and this actually will be an example of changing the verb here, right? Changing the verb here will be this exactly. Like you can subscribe to receive the message that the streetlight is publishing, right?
In that case, the message would probably be the same. Say it supported both. Does Async API support like a components type?
Exactly the same. Okay. Exactly the same as in OpenAPI. So you can have here messages, and then we can call it turn on message maybe, and we can have the message or only the payload, but let's just have the whole message. Okay, so I hope, it doesn't have the right indentation there. So here we can just have $ref components, messages, turn on message, right? So this poses other questions, right? Like who should be defining the message here? Like for instance, if we create another service, the control panel service, and an async API for this other service or microservice or call it whatever you want, then should the other one be referenced in this file on this definition here, or who should be the owner of the definition? What we found is there's no owner of the definition, or it can be the producer of the message. Whoever is sending the message is the owner of the message, right? But there are cases where you have multiple producers, you have multiple applications producing the same message. For instance, as an example, it can be that you have a message saying that whenever a user signs up in your product, then you might want to send a message saying send a campaign, whatever, or send a marketing campaign, or other kind of communication to the user. This can be email, can be an SMS, for instance, an email and SMS. You might use the same message, and then inside the message specify this is an email or this is an SMS, but you use the same kind of message. You only have a type field on your message saying it must be an email or an SMS. In this case, you might have two different services saying, hey, publish an email, and these other ones say, hey, publish an SMS now. But so therefore you have two different producers on the same channel. And so who's the owner of this message? Right? So that's the problem of this kind of architectures. I mean, problem or challenge, not problem, not actually not problem, more a challenge, right? What happens then is that I tend to think that there are no owners of messages. And instead, what I do is I extract this, especially the payload, right? But it can be anything, like the whole message. It's easy to extract this into another file and just get rid of this, right? And we create another file here. Right? It can be like this, maybe. And then we save it, I don't know, like this is turn on message camel, okay? And then from here, instead of referencing components, you reference the whole file, right?
So the pound sign is in file, and then we can relatively reference other files externally.
And then you have another async API file somewhere referencing the same message. You do the same. You point to that file. This file can be relative to your code, or can be a GitHub URL, or can be a, I don't know, S3, or can be any kind of storage, right? This is a URL, so this can be, I don't know, like
it could be a full URL, yeah.
My messages.com, right? Right. So this is a fully qualified URL. So yeah. So that's a way to share the messages. Another way to share the messages is that you use a schema registry, for instance, like a Confluent schema registry. In this case, you don't store the whole message, but you only can store the payload, right? Which is pretty limited, but still something, right? Because, yeah.
Fran, this might be a silly question, but when we talk about OpenAPI, we talk about it as being, a contract that producer and consumer can both adhere to. And I see this as being a contract as well, especially since we're describing schema, we're describing interaction patterns. Is there any concept of contract-based testing that can be derived from this? Like, can I take this and say, okay, this is what the shape of my event should look like, point it to a broker, listen for those events coming in, and then do validation on top of that?
Well, this is hopefully something that we'll implement at Postman this year, hopefully, if we manage to understand how to do it properly, so it's beneficial for the user. And there's something already. There's some. I'm gonna share this with you. So I'm sharing on the private chat because I cannot communicate.
Please talk about it.
So Microx is a new initiative that supports OpenAPI and AsyncAPI and allows you to use Async API file as a contract, right? And this is pretty cool because you can actually set up this. Like, let me just come back to our example here. So the same way you can use these examples for documentation purposes, you can use these examples for testing as well to feed the testing tool, right? So in the case of Microx, they're using this, it's not exactly these examples, but more the examples at the message level, right? So you can have examples here at the message level, and you can have specific headers or payload. I mean, there are more fields, but one thing that you can do here is you can specify that a payload is, I don't know, ID streetlight 001, right? And this is one example. And right, so Microx will use this information to run tests against. It will connect to a broker. It will send some examples, and then it will expect that you get these messages matching these examples depending on your Async API file, right? Depending on if you are publishing or subscribing, it will do one or the other, right? It will either publish them or either subscribe to them, right? Pretty cool tool, by the way. It's still early days, but it's a pretty cool tool.
Yeah,
And so
it's pretty cool. I'm wondering, Fran, is there any hints that you can give us about what the plans are with Postman?
Actually, not much. Not because I don't want to. It's just that honestly, there's not many developed plans yet. My perception is that we're gonna be doing this for WebSockets initially, at least for WebSockets and HTTP servers and events. Maybe for another protocol like Kafka or MQTT, but still to be defined. And for sure, what needs to be there on Postman is support for Async API, so you can have all your APIs together into a single place. And for instance, a developer portal can be there, right? The documentation renderer can be rendering also event-driven or asynchronous APIs. And next step will be to have testing for this kind of APIs, right? For asynchronous APIs, like we mentioned, like if it's expecting to receive these messages with these examples and blah blah blah, okay, so it will automatically send some messages to maybe a mock broker, maybe, or an existing broker. It depends on you, on how you configure it, and then actually checking that it's matching the spec, right? This could be, that's how I see it. But yeah, again, there's nothing really advanced on that detail of features. But yeah, that's how I can see an initial iteration on the async or on the event-driven architecture support.
We've got some groundwork to lay right now, and
Yeah.
it's being worked on right now with WebSockets being the first, as he mentioned.
Yeah.
But we've got to kind of think of the journey of Postman as an HTTP client. You know, we've got to get some basic capabilities in there to work with you know, asynchronous patterns and protocols before we can start testing and documenting and doing the other things that we do across the life cycles.
Cool. Well, this is super cool. I'm definitely looking forward to what comes next. So what are you doing here, Fran? Are you publishing a message?
Yeah, I'm trying to communicate with the service, but let me just check if it's correctly configured or not. Turn on. I hope the broker is the right one, and I'm not listening into another one. Okay. So yeah, I'm trying to communicate both services to send a message to this service here, but don't know where this is publishing. Unable to locate Java runtime. Ooh.
Oof.
Yeah. Actually, look, if someone from the audience want to try, there's this. This could be done as well. Like there's this documentation here. Let me share for the MQTT CLI, and
I'm going to share
yeah.
that in the chat here. 1 second.
Yeah, let's do it. And if it works, if someone publishes a message, we'll see it here, right? So yeah, so if someone has a Java runtime, I don't want to install Java runtime during the demo.
No, who does? No, I don't think install it off the demo.
So yeah, you gotta trust me that it works. So yeah, or you send the message yourself. So yeah, and yeah, I mean, so far what I can tell you is a little bit more about the plans, the Async API initiative. So when I say Async API initiative, is like the organization, the foundation taking care of the spec and the tooling. As you can see, we haven't been very creative there. Like this is mapping OpenAPI initiative, Async API initiative. So not very not very creative, right?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to talk about, like, so Postman as a company has a partnership with the Async API initiative, right? But there's no ownership there, right? Like it's not going to be Async API copyright Postman.
No, exactly. So the deal here was more about sustaining the open source project, right? Developing it forward, right? This is in the early days, as you can see, but there are many bugs to fix and problems to solve and challenges to solve and tools to create. There are many things to do. And one of the things that we discussed initially is that, look, this cannot be seen, and this not only seen, but this cannot be a Postman initiative, right? This cannot be a Postman project, because then we end up again in the RAML versus OpenAPI war, and we don't want that again, right? It's like now another spec appears, which is actually open source, and look, we got a message, which is funny. I saw it on the restream first, before it arrived to my my VS Code. I don't know, weird. Anyway, so it was
Oh wow! Thank you.
Yeah, let's pretend it's not you. So yeah, the deal was more like, hey, let's make it sustainable, let's develop it forward, and therefore the first thing that we have to do is host Async API in a neutral ground, in a foundation, right? So we're now in the process of actually almost finishing now the process of joining a foundation. We'll announce which one will it be, and yeah, so and then next step with this, we ensure that this is in a neutral ground. Any company can participate, and it's taking more time actually, because we're taking the time. Lucas and we're taking the time to work on the charter for the foundation. So it's actually democratic, and it's actually difficult for any company to just dominate the project and manipulate the project, right, to their own interests. So that's why
We've never seen that happen before anywhere else.
We've never seen that. So that's why we're just developers. We like to spend time on details that never happen. So yeah. And which, by the way, it's been a fun work, because we've been trying to lay out like a kind of a contract. Charter is like a kind of agreement, right? Legal agreement with lawyers words, complex words, and way of saying things, and we've been trying to do it ourselves before a lawyer review it. Of course, there will be many lawyers reviewing it actually. So yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun. But the cool thing is that at the end of this month and next month, we'll have it ready, and we'll be part of a foundation. So yeah, of a neutral ground. Just the cool thing here is that Postman. Sorry.
I'm wondering if Kin's going to be involved in that, since Kin, I don't know what your title is in OpenAPI now, but it sounds really important. So I'm wondering if you're going to continue your open specification work with Async API as well.
Oh, yes.
He's a chair.
Yes. I mean, I have a vested interest in OpenAPI. You know, that's why these are permanently on my board, is because I'm very interested in the roadmaps for all of them.
Awesome.
And speaking about roadmap, that's the next thing that I have to present very, very soon, and is a vision and the roadmap for AsyncAPI during the next 5 years, and something that is almost there now, that just figuring out a good way to communicate it now. And I just can say that things are gonna get hot, basically. Things are gonna get hot. Just
Wow.
I don't want to say anything else, but yeah. So yeah, things are gonna get hot.
You are a master of suspense.
Yeah.
Fran, I'm curious. What is the best way to get started with Async API? We talked about some potential hurdles. We went through, kind of scaffolding out things. But say I want to learn more. I want to get started. Is there a community that I can go to? Is there documentation I can start referencing?
So actually, I think your best bet here will be you go to our website. Everything is on our website. We always make sure that people have everything they need available on the website. I'm sharing here. Okay. So before I say that you have tools here, you have learning resources like a getting started guide, tutorials, and the spec itself, right? And but there's also this community menu here, which is where you can find tools and services that community have created, our GitHub organization, and this is super important, our Slack workspace. So our Slack workspace is open for anyone to join, right? You just have to click here, and it will take you to an invitation page, and you'll get an auto invitation. Basically, you'll get into the Slack workspace as soon as possible, right? If you want to share this link, maybe so it's easier for people to click on it, and yeah, and also if we scroll down, you'll see that we hold meetings every 2 weeks. One is US friendly or America friendly, I would say, and the other one is APAC friendly. So it's Australia and Oceania. How do you call this? Oceania.
Ocean and Pacific Islander. There's a lot of places that are underneath there.
Okay, yeah, and this area, right? So we hold one, as you can see, on the afternoons for Europe, and another one on the mornings for Europe. This is my time zone, right? So it's just to make sure that we cover the whole globe. And you can add to your Google Calendar, join the mailing list so you don't miss anyone. You can watch the previous recordings. There's a bunch of resources, and also blog. And if you don't want to be checking this every time, just subscribe, and we'll ping you every month with a newsletter with the summary of what we did last month, right? Actually, the last blog post was exactly this, was January at Async API, and all the details. Again, if you really want to try it out, I recommend going through the docs and the playground maybe at the same time, and this way you can play, right? And yeah, here you have, if you're new to event-driven architectures, you can see a simple, not simple, I will not call it simple, I will like a brief explanation of what an event-driven architecture is, and the key words. And if you're coming from OpenAPI, what are the similarities and differences? This is inspired by, I think it's Darrell Miller's work
Yeah.
on OpenAPI. Compare Swagger with OpenAPI, and then we did the same, but with Async API. And you can see that it's almost the same somehow, but yeah, with a few changes, right? A few already. So
Oh,
yeah.
expecting a cage match between OAS and async.
Yeah.
What's that coming?
No, they get along well. They work together, so that it'll be a cage match where they're tag teaming something out, some other spec, gRPC or something.
Yeah. So actually, one of the key points I would say of the upcoming roadmap that I want to present is that yeah, we want to be compatible not only with OpenAPI but with any kind of API. I'll explain a little bit more once I have everything ready. But yeah, if let's say in summary, it's
API? Are you implying that OpenAPI can't effectively model every API, Fran?
it can't. Yeah. No. How can you use how can you model an MQTT API with OpenAPI?
So
I
are you
tried and I failed miserably. That's why I created Async API.
API is better than OpenAPI? I'm trying to
It is much.
I'm trying to give the audience
It is much better. Let's fight, King. No, let's not fight with King. No, I don't want to lose. So yeah. No, I was just just wanted to say here is that I want to look at it from the point of view of the user, right? So users are not only doing REST APIs or GraphQL APIs or Kafka, or they're in big corporations, especially they're probably doing all of them, right? So now suppose that you have a user model, like just have name, email, date of birth, and blah blah blah, and you want to use it on OpenAPI. Okay, you define it with JSON schema, and for AsyncAPI, cool, same thing works. But now you go to GraphQL and you have to define it following you have to define the model using the GraphQL schema format, the type format, right? JSON schema is not supported there. And you go to gRPC and you have the same problem. I mean, you have to adapt to their language, and that's a pain. That's a pain for the user, right? Because then you cannot reuse, or you have to take care of automatically transforming from JSON schema to other formats, or the other way around, and keeping things compatible. And yeah, that's not good. So we want to take this complexity ourselves at Async API. So with Async API, you should be able to use any GraphQL type definition, gRPC message definition, OpenAPI, JSON schema definitions, and so on, right? So it's up to us as specification authors. It's our responsibility to support them, right? To make the life easier, the life of the user easier, right? It's not supposed for the user to be taking this responsibility themselves. So that's part of the core message. Let's say that's the core message of what's coming next for Async API, basically.
Great. Like, what are some folks doing when this starts to scale out a bit? I mean, are they storing like a library of these JSON schema files that describe these events? Are they like storing a list of their servers and Is this something that, like, as a developer, I can come and do some discovery on and figure out what is available in my organization, and potentially start contributing or subscribing?
So there are a variety of approaches here. One of them is storing the files in a GitHub repo. Can be in a centralized repo, or can be each definition on their own repo together with the application it's using it. That's one way. The other way is using schema registries like the Confluent and Apicurio schema registries. So this is like storage for schemas. So that's what it's for, right? And now actually Confluent now supports JSON Schema. Before it used to only support Avro, and so now it's much easier, right? And there slowly I'm finding that more and more products, either public products or internal products, are starting to add support for Async API for these files, for these reusable pieces to be stored somewhere, right? So they can reuse them between Async API and OpenAPI, right? And they can index them together, right?
Oh, that's interesting. I'm starting to, like, my memory is starting to kick in from when I was doing event-driven architecture long ago, and we were, doing our own event modeling. This is, over a decade ago, and we were storing like XML schema definitions for this stuff, right? And we had just like our own repository of these large XSDs, and even then, it felt like things could be so much better. And we certainly weren't doing things like modeling the interaction points. Like you talked about modeling what the control panel might be doing or listening for or responding to versus the streetlight. These were just, giant buckets of events with hardly any context. So I definitely see a lot of promise in this approach. And it's super exciting. I'm looking forward to getting a little bit closer to it over time.
Wait, event-driven architecture's not new? I thought this is all brand new stuff.
It was invented by Amazon, and in the last 5 years. No, event-driven architecture is super old, right? These messaging patterns you can find. You can just look at like book covers is how I judge how old things are. And so if you look at patterns of message-driven architecture, you'll find books with like laser lines through it and looking really really old, or like bubbly letters, like pre-web 2.0.
So yeah,
Fran, thanks a lot for taking us through this. Any parting words for our audience, Fran or Kin?
I think my main parting words here will be, please support JSON Schema. It's a core piece of OpenAPI and AsyncAPI and other tools which are not related to OpenAPI or AsyncAPI. And like it's a core. I can tell you that it's probably like 70 or 80% of the specs right now, and it's the most it's the less lucky in terms of financing, the less lucky specification, right? So people are talking about OpenAPI, are talking about Async API and all of that, but without JSON Schema, that will be nothing. And so
that's such a good point. How do we support this? Is there a link that you can?
Yeah, let me just. You have it?
Yeah, I'll pull it up. The JSON Schema website is where you can go to get involved. They also have a Slack channel that you can tune into. So it's very similar to sorry, coming right up as soon as I find the right browser tab. It's very similar to Async. You can go to the website and find things, but right in the top corner is join our Slack for the JSON Schema community, and you can go there. But there's also ways you can contribute and support and sponsor them. JSON Schema definitely needs financial support as well. So I will add. Oh, go ahead, Fran.
No, I was saying that I was going to say that it's doesn't
There you
have to
go.
be like a lot of money, right? It's just sometimes even a small contribution can make a difference. So
Yeah. So I'm gonna paste the Open Collective link here.
Yeah.
You can also go that route in supporting. I will add Friday, so that is tomorrow. Oh my gosh. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. and then repeating every Friday at 9 a.m. We are doing this similar live stream, but it will be dedicated to, as Kevin mentioned, my open effort. So Postman Open, which is just kind of slow rolling, getting out, but it's our focus on open API specifications, and that's with a space in it. So all API specifications that are open source, not just OpenAPI, the specification, and the open tooling around them. So I will be zooming out a little bit and talking about all of the specs, but then I will be diving into specific tools. And we mentioned Microx as one. Microx is a great multi-spec open source tool that you can mock and do testing with. And we'll be diving into tools like that and other tooling for a live stream, 9 a.m. Fridays, starting tomorrow is the first one. And if you're interested more in async, we'll be talking about it there as well.
9 a.m. which time zone?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not as good as Fran at realizing everybody doesn't live on the West Coast. It is 9 a.m. Pacific time, and we're gonna try to keep it that time. We were gonna do 12, but again, I have people from Europe telling me, "Hey, that does not work for us." So yes, 9 a.m. Pacific time tomorrow. Postman Open live stream, and I look forward to seeing you all there.
Great, and this stream, the Postman mainline live stream, is every Thursday, right, at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Do we know what next week is going to be? Do we have a plan?
I don't.
Or are you taking it over? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just Fridays. So I'm not. I don't. It's Arlamine Joyce is up to next week, and then I'm doing the one just Friday for Postman Open. Be taking that. What's the schedule say? We should have been more prepared.
He's on the chat, by the way, Arlamine. So,
yes, and Joyce too.
Well,
they're gonna be like, these guys, these rookies, these amateurs.
First and last time. We'll certainly tune in next week. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. They're still waiting on the title of the stream. Okay. All right. So we didn't miss anything, Kin. We're right on top of it. All right. Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Kin and Fran. Really appreciate you being here and walking through this with us.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day.